Hey, everybody, this is Kenny. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. I got the honor of talking to the host of From Embers to Excellence podcast. He's a retired battalion chief and author of Fireproof, your grand strategy for transforming failure into fuel for your future. Dave Hollenbach joined me on the show, and Dave had so much advice for leaders. He talked about what leaders are missing today. He talked about emotional intelligence and why that is so important, not only at work, but in life as well. But most importantly, he shared his story. You will be amazed. You'll be inspired. Don't miss a second. Let's get at it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. It is all about leadership today and strong leadership. I have a wonderful guest with me, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce him. He is the host of the From Embers to Excellence podcast. He's a retired battalion chief, and he's the author of Fireproof, your grand strategy for transforming failure into fuel for your future. I want to welcome to the podcast Dave Hollenbach this morning or this afternoon, evening, whatever time it is. Dave, how are you, sir? It is so great to meet you.
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, it's my honor. It's my honor to talk to you. What a wonderful, wonderful background that you have that I really want you to take your time and tell the audience. I'd love to start with your backstory and what led you to go into the profession that you went into, and now to really take all those years of just this unbelievable profession that you were in, and now take that and use it to help leaders. So tell us your backstory and maybe some lessons along the way.
All right. Well, let's see. I'd say that I was kind of born into the fire service. Well, not exactly, but pretty close. When I was born, my dad was in the Navy. I was born on the Navy base here in Orlando that no longer exists. My mom and dad met on that Navy base, and after my dad got out of the Navy, he went into the fire service, and there's pictures of me and my younger brother sitting on fire trucks, and sitting on training grounds where you can see fire in the background. And I remember that 3 or 4 years old, sliding down the pole at my dad's firehouse and sitting on the fire truck and talking with the other firefighters and stuff. And it was just kind of, I don't know, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. When I got out of high school, I did a little bit of college, and then I enlisted in the Navy. When I got out of the Navy, went back to school, got all my certifications, got my associate, my AS degree in fire science, and went to the fire academy. And while I was going to the fire academy, I volunteered for a fire department that was nearby, where the town that I was living in. And then once I got certified, I applied at one fire department, the fire department that my dad retired from, the one that I grew up in. And I went to work there. All in all, total 23 years in the fire service before I left. And and that's part of the story that I talk about in my book, because it was not at the time, it was devastating leaving the career that I had worked so hard to become what I thought was a pretty, I was very well respected as a battalion chief. And the problem was that I was not living up to my own standards. In my personal life, I was making some poor decisions. I was struggling with PTSD and not really practicing uh, the kind of self leadership that I try and pass on to others now.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
you know, self leadership. If you and I'll steal a quote from Frank Viscuso. If you a leader of one will one day lead many, but if you can't lead one, you'll never lead any.
Annie. Yeah, I remember that
And
quote. That's awesome. Yeah.
and part of it, especially within the fire service, law enforcement, the military, that piece of mental health, really making sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you can show up for the people that you're leading,
Hmm.
um, and be 100%. And I look back and I see how I was falling short later in my career because my life was a wreck. My personal life was a wreck.
Hmm.
At work, I was doing everything that I needed to do and then some. I felt I was a very, very competent battalion chief,
Hmm.
and I worked in some really busy areas, and I know that I did a lot of good.
Hmm.
But that piece of uh, really leading by example and taking care of your mental health, I feel like I failed a lot of people in that arena
Hmm.
because I was not leading by example,
Wow.
and
Wow.
and and so that was when I left the fire service. It was not my decision. Um, Thankfully, I had enough time that I could retire, but uh, it, my employment was terminated,
Hmm.
and it was very humbling, uh, somewhat humiliating, and uh, I felt this loss of identity, loss of purpose. I had already been isolating myself outside of work,
Hmm.
uh, and that just got worse after I left the fire service and really had to face my demons.
Hmm.
And uh, I came very close to taking my own life,
Hmm.
and thankfully I didn't.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and it was the next morning after uh, that night where I almost did, and um, I was scared, I was terrified at what I had almost done, and ashamed that I had almost done that to my daughter, and I committed to doing everything that I could to overcome what I was dealing with,
Hmm.
to develop myself into somebody that I could be proud of, that my daughter could be proud of, and give back. Because I knew that I was not the only one struggling.
Hmm.
Um, I've lost quite a few friends over the years from suicide, and um, you know, one is too many. I just hope that through sharing my story and really talking about the importance of self leadership and taking care of your mental health as a key component. It's not something to be ashamed of. When people are seeing the kind of things that firefighters and veterans and law enforcement officers see day in and day out, it's not uh, unnatural for people to develop what has been termed PTSD.
Wow.
Um,
Yes.
it's physiological. It's what our bodies do to take care of ourselves. Our body responds in a certain way, that fight, flight, or freeze. piece, our uh, amygdala, is really acting out of what it feels is our best interest to preserve our life.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that, uh, but if you're in that state for a prolonged period of time, day in and day out, it becomes who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes its toll on your mental health, your relationships, uh, your your physical health, and you have to take care of yourself. You have to uh, overcome uh, really what your body is doing to you, what your brain is doing to you.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Dave, I so applaud you. You're so transparent with your story, and I wanna just ask a few things around it. And one, was this gradual for you? Were there moments, during your 23 years where there was just this one moment where you knew, uh-oh, I'm in trouble? Or was this just a gradual buildup for you?
Well, knowing what I know now, uh, I don't know if you're familiar with the ACE study.
No.
It's a study that was done. It actually originated from a study where I want to believe it was physicians and psychiatrists that were looking at obesity in young people,
Hmm.
and they started discovering that there was a connection to trauma, and what they termed adverse childhood experiences, or
Hmm.
ACE. And there's a scale of 1 to 10, or 0 to 10, 0 being that you haven't had any adverse childhood experiences, which is extremely rare. I don't think that it's possible to go through childhood without having some
Yeah.
uh, form of trauma.
Yes.
And for those listening, if they want to learn more about this, I do have it on my website under resources, mental health resources.
Mhm.
And there I have it in a little graphic where it talks about the 10 different pieces of adverse childhood experiences, which is emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect, battered mother, parental separation or divorce, mental illness in the household, substance abuse in the household, incarcerated household member.
Mm,
So those 10 things,
mhm,
just one of them would count as one. And
mhm.
so, and they found a direct correlation between the higher your number is, I think it's like 6 or higher, you're more likely to suffer from mental health issues, addiction, um, uh, more likely to have died,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and
Yeah.
by the age of 40, I believe. So it's I beat the odds.
Yeah.
I My score is an 8, and
8. My gosh.
my my younger brother, Sean, he passed away in 2010
Mm,
uh, from a drug overdose. And my youngest brother has had his own battles. He's doing pretty good now, but um, he's got a pretty high score as well. I think all of my uh, siblings.
mhm, mhm.
I'm the oldest. Um, I had a little bit different experiences, but you know,
Yeah.
pretty similar.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've actually been asked this, how I've been able to be as successful as I am, having gone through as much as I have.
Mhm.
And I really don't know.
Well,
Uh,
it's you took a question away from me there because it makes it even more amazing. And I'm hearing that there probably was some awareness, I guess, as you're going through these 23 years. And but now to take that and just, dedicate your life to helping others is just absolutely incredible. Um, I want to
well,
also, oh, go ahead. Yes.
so when I went into the fire service, I really had not dealt with any of my childhood trauma.
Wow. Okay.
And it wasn't until I was, uh, gosh, well, 2010, February 2010 is when my brother Sean passed away. And I went to a really dark place. And that was when some friends and family had expressed concern for me. And I went and saw somebody, but quickly, said, "Oh, this is baloney," and they don't understand, um, and so I didn't go back for quite some time,
Hmm.
and I ran, and this is shortly after the Pulse nightclub massacre
Yes.
in Orlando.
Yes.
There was an event which the Pulse nightclub massacre occurred on my birthday, June 12th.
Wow.
And it was because it was my birthday, I had my county phone off. I had it turned off
Hmm.
because at the time I was the chief of special operations, and I would typically have it on in case something big went down. I would typically get called out to it.
Hmm.
And that was one of those kind of calls that I would have gotten called out on. And I just really am thankful that I did not go, um, because quite a few of the people that I worked closely with have struggles to this day.
Oh, I can imagine. Oh my gosh.
And
Yes. Yes.
and so it was shortly after that incident that a car uh, drove through the front of a daycare center, um, eh, just as these 3 and 4 year olds were sitting down at a table to have snack. And beyond that table was a wall, and beyond that wall was a playroom full of 4 and 5 year olds. And that car went through the front wall, through all of those 3 and 4 year olds, through the interior wall, and crashed into the rear wall. And when I arrived on scene, um, I some of my special ops guys were lifting the car off of 4 children, and
Wow.
I know that there were more under there before I got there.
Hmm.
And it was just a really horrific scene.
Hmm.
And it was not long after that that many of the people that I worked with noticed a change in me and pushed me to, or encouraged me to go get some help. And there was a program that had just become available to firefighters and first responders. It was originally grant funded through the federal government and UCF, um, University of Central Florida. They were treating combat veterans with PTSD. That was what the program was designed for, but they found that you know, it was the same principles used
Hmm.
for firefighters and law enforcement officers.
Hmm.
So I went through that program and felt like I was good to go. And I kept on with my career, kept running calls, kept on seeing all the bad stuff. And by 2019, those calls had racked up and taken its toll. I wasn't sleeping. I was having nightmares. Pretty, I guess it would be considered night terrors.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was just, and then really, when you're not at work, or when I wasn't at work, I was, you know, self medicating. I was doing things that, uh, made me feel good,
Hmm.
chasing adrenaline, doing dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
And it, it just, it wasn't until uh, things really came to a head that I realized how far I had fallen.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
and you I isolated myself quite a bit because you don't feel like anybody can really understand. And reality is that so many other people have gone through worse things than me. You know, it's um. So I like to share my story because I know when I was in the place that I was in, I didn't feel like there was anybody out there that could relate. Um, and if they could,
Mm-hmm.
it was, you know, I became aware of their struggles after they had committed suicide.
Mm.
So, um, yeah.
Wow. Uh, man, oh man, oh man. Oh, there's so much more I want to ask you here. Again, thank you. And now you really painted an even bigger picture, for me. So now how does it get to from where you're at then and to now in being inspired to write a book and being inspired now to share that story, but now also shifting either even and talking about leadership. How does that connect there, Dave? What was some things that triggered for you to want to do what you're doing now?
Well, when I first got promoted to lieutenant, which is company officer, um, be like the third rank up from firefighter to firefighter, engineer, lieutenant, or captain,
Hmm.
battalion chief, and so on. So when I got promoted to lieutenant, I went to a station, pretty busy station, where the crew was pretty senior. Several of the people that I was charged with leading had more experience, had more time. Um, and I examined my career and was like, wow, why would any of them listen to me? Why would they follow
Right.
me anywhere? And that was the beginning of my leadership development journey. I realized that my department had really not prepared me for that position.
Hmm.
Um, as a leader, I think a lot of what they had focused on was uh, management, scene management, tactics and strategy, all that stuff. I was pretty well versed in handling emergencies, but the dynamics of people,
Yes.
I was out of my element and I needed to learn and I needed to learn fast. And thankfully, I had a couple of seasoned veterans on my crew, and uh, my crew, they were just amazing people. And one of the individuals that I worked with in developing a leadership program for me and for my crew is he was an Army Ranger,
Hmm.
and he really helped me a lot in putting together uh, some pretty good tools, and it evolved from there. I started going around to stations on my days off and sharing this program,
Mm. Okay.
and it just kept getting better. And eventually, the training department heard what I was doing. They invited me to start teaching at the Lieutenant's Academy, and then teaching uh, new recruits. Um, and then it became a part of our professional development curriculum, where on day one, you come in as a new recruit firefighter and you are exposed to leadership principles and the importance of self leadership. And when you're out representing the fire service, representing the fire department, wearing that uniform, people don't know that it's your first week.
Right. Yeah.
If you tell them to do something, they will do it. They trust you.
Hmm.
And you've got to live up to that image.
Mm.
That and and then you follow this professional development through the ranks. And I became very passionate about it. I realized that My work life was so much better. Um, the crew was developing so much faster. They were happier. They were enjoying the job. They were becoming better as a team. And uh, I, I, tur- I stole this term. It's called selfish altruism. And the idea is that you work very, very hard at adding value to yourself so that you are better able to add value to the team. You're leading by example. And through this and through the team seeing what you're doing, adding value to yourself so that, and then, being very free with sharing whatever information, whatever knowledge you gain, giving that to them and really helping them to succeed. Uh, they then follow that lead, work really hard at adding value to themselves. And it was not odd to walk out of my office at 3 o'clock in the morning after doing a report and hearing the guys doing some training in the bay.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was just, that is what I feel when you arrive on scene and it's somebody's worst day and you see the fire department arrive, you see law enforcement, whatever. When you arrive on scene, you want people to see you and automatically experience a sense of calm that things are about to get better. And you can't uh, you can't inspire that sense of calm if you aren't well trained.
Yeah. 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 Wow. So I see now the story, the thread here. You started getting that spark and really being able to help others. And it sounds like that's what led to some of these next steps. I can't let you go without getting some leadership advice for the audience here. So give us you talk about emotional intelligence, and that's been one of the kind of buzz two words, right, for a little while now. What are your thoughts on emotional intelligence? Why is it important?
Well, I'll explain. So I just explained the leadership development program that was initiated in my department. I quickly realized that there were certain skills, tools that stood out as being what the fire service was lacking and what really differentiated great leaders from mediocre or poor leaders. And these skills were empathy, communication skills, being able to communicate with the people that you're leading. And part of that is listening a lot more than you're talking.
Yep.
And doing it in a way that the people that you're leading know you care about what they're saying. Being able to put yourself in their shoes, being self-aware. So having this self-awareness so that when you're saying something somebody doesn't understand or completely get it, you know that maybe you're not saying it the way that it needs to be said for them to understand it. So having that awareness of your own shortcomings and being able to overcome that, I think is key. Now,
yeah.
when I went back to school as a lieutenant to get my bachelor's degree and continued on and got my master's. And it was when I was working on my master's that I was introduced to emotional intelligence, the concept of emotional intelligence. And this is an interesting conversation that I don't think you were expecting to come out of this. But what I realized and what Dan Goleman, he is the one that coined the term emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So he identified through evaluating emotional intelligence men and women, that many times, well, most of the time, women would score much higher in certain areas and men would score much higher in certain areas. And those areas that women scored much higher in are those areas that I talked about that were lacking in the fire service. The
Yes.
communication skills, the
Hmm.
empathy, self-awareness,
Hmm.
being able to develop these relationships and maintain them. Um, these are skills that women tend to develop and hone. Uh, it's not that men don't develop those skills. It's just by and large, women tend to grasp the concept
Yes.
or the value earlier.
No doubt.
Um, Now, the fire service is actually one of the more exclusive cultures out there when it comes to women in the workforce.
Mhm.
I actually did the research, dug deeper, found that the 2010 census indicated that women made up the fire service 3.7% of the workforce in the fire service, compared to law enforcement, military, other kind of manual labor, dangerous jobs, where it was 17% or greater.
Hmm.
So 3.7% in the fire service,
Really low.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then in 2020, it grew at the staggering rate of 1% over 10 years, so 4.7%.
Yeah.
And it is the culture
Mm.
that it's exclusive. Now, the fire service has been doing a great job of hiring more women, but they they don't do a real good job at retaining them.
Hmm.
It's usually about between 6 to 10 years women will leave the fire service,
Wow.
and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So my point in saying all of that is diversity on your teams, I think, is key to having an incredible team.
Hmm.
The stuff that you learn from other genders, other races, other religions, it's been some of the most phenomenal teams that I've ever worked on
No
have
doubt.
been the most diverse.
No doubt. No doubt. I love that. You really broke down emotional intelligence so well and why it's important. Let me get one more piece of advice from you. What would you say are one or two must-haves if you want to be a great leader today, starting out running a restaurant or a retail store? What's one or two things that they have to have, Dave, in their arsenal? What one or two qualities that they need to have and work on?
I feel like they need to define their purpose.
Okay, awesome.
And
Yeah.
and what I it's it has to be defined for yourself.
Hmm.
Every person is going to express their purpose in a different way. For me, for 23 years, it was the fire service. That was how I expressed my purpose. That's how I defined my purpose. But I realized that it really is just I'm passionate about helping others,
Hmm.
whether it's on an emergency or helping them develop professionally, helping them overcome their demons.
Hmm.
Um, that is what I'm passionate about. And I feel like when somebody wants to excel in any industry, identify their purpose. What is their role? What is it that they're most passionate about in that industry,
Hmm.
and fine tune that. Make it to where when you go to work, you've got something to offer the people that you're leading and help them achieve their version of greatness.
Hmm.
And if you can make that your purpose, adding value to the people that you're leading, I feel like you can't help but succeed.
No doubt. No doubt. Love it. Love it. Dave, this has been amazing. I am just in awe of what you do. Um, the way you've come from in your story. I'm in awe two ways. One, that you went through it, but second, that you share it and you share it so openly. And you just never know who you're going to help. I'm sure you've helped so many already and going to help a lot more in the future. So please keep doing what you're doing. God bless you for it. And it is an amazing journey that you're still on, that you're sharing. So folks, listen to the podcast From Embers to Excellence. I've got my book on the way, so I can't wait to rip it open, and I'll send you some positive stuff on that, because I'm sure it's amazing. My last question for you, and I'll make sure I post it when we put this out there, is how can people contact you?
You can go to my website, hollenbachleadership.com. All of my social media is on there, linked on the main page of my website. You can contact me through email. I tend not to put my phone number out there,
Right.
Until I develop a connection, a real connection with somebody.
Oh, no doubt. Yes. No doubt.
But yeah, social media, it is actually me. So any messages that I get, I respond to them. And yeah, and you can get my book there on my website,
Yes.
or on Amazon, Barnes
sure.
and Noble.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Dave, this has been amazing. And I can't wait to continue to connect with you. I thank you so much for taking the time today. I know how busy you are too. And just sharing so openly, and what great advice you've left us for the leaders that will be listening to this. So thank you again. So folks, we are going to leave it there. This has been Kenny and Dave. This has been the Leading from the Middle podcast. We'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, Dave.